Everybody. This is the Friday Night Podcast, Shining Light on Shadows. And I'm John Farrell, the host. We've been talking the last couple of weeks about beliefs and values. And I wanted to go into a little bit more of the shadows of our beliefs and values. Where do they come from? We're not born with beliefs and values. They come from our experience. A lot of our experience has become shadows, things that memories, part of our psyche that we suppress, we deny. And we hold these values and beliefs to be true, but they're at an unconscious level. So they say the person is not their behavior, but a lot of their behavior is born out of these unconscious beliefs and values. And it's really difficult to sit down there with a piece of paper and write out what are my beliefs, what are my values, because we talk about shadows. The shadows are the parts of us that are denied, suppressed. We don't have conscious access to them. So sitting down and writing a piece of paper, well, it has the benefits. They're on the surface. It's a journey. It's not a destination. It takes a bit more work. It's like unpeeling the layers of an onion. So let's take a step back. Beliefs and values. We all have them, like we all have shadows. And a lot of those beliefs and values will empower us. They'll make us stronger having those beliefs and values. But there's a lot of them that don't. Right? They disempower us. And unfortunately, these are the ones that tend to come up, the ones that disempower us. Those senses of, I'm not worth it, I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough to do this. And it's a journey for all of us, and especially since this is particularly aimed at coaches and trainers, we'll encounter clients that are grappling with these same problems of limiting beliefs and limiting values. And it's a lot easier for us to deal with them within our client when we've walked that journey ourselves. When we've been on that journey, we've dealt with a lot of our limiting beliefs, and we see them coming up in the clients. We can hold the space for those clients to deal with their own shadows. We've all had those moments when we have a wobble, when we don't believe we're good enough, when we're training and we want to get the best for the clients, but we're not quite sure we are. These are the senses, the feelings, the beliefs and values that come up for us that are our shadows. Having done personal development for a little while, you'll start to recognize these feelings when they do come up. And shadow work is actually about dealing with those shadows, those limiting beliefs, the reasons for them, not the limiting beliefs themselves. It's the reason that supports those limiting beliefs, those limiting values. As I said, we all have them, and it's a journey of integrating, working with what comes up. So how do they show up, these shadows? One of the primary things is in projection. It's a mechanism that we exhibit with things within ourselves that we deny, we project onto other people. So if you have feelings of envy, what you tend to see in projection is greed in other people. The belief in the greed about others is that projection that we have of envy, the envy which is in ourselves. So it's not the greed in other people, it's understanding what's coming up for ourselves. We suppress, we deny that sense of envy, and we project it. So the behavior, the projection, the person is not their behavior, but it takes a little bit of self-work, it takes shadow work to uncover what's really going on there. And the first part is noticing the triggers, noticing these things are coming up for us. So projection is one of the main ways that these beliefs, values, these shadows show up. Compensatory belief is another one. The counterbalance of our own unconscious fears, our own conscious inferiorities, our own unconscious limiting beliefs. We develop compensatory beliefs. We develop exaggerated beliefs about ourselves. So we start to believe we're superior, we're invulnerable. So there's that counterbalance that we start to evolve and develop for ourselves when we have that limiting belief. And of course, those superiority and vulnerability, that counterbalance belief is what we're projecting out, what we're believing, what we see in the world, our behavior. Again, not helpful. But it takes work to find out what's actually going on. So it's not a surface level thing. It takes a little bit of deeper work. Now, value judgments. Another way that our shadows influence our values, in this case, value judgments. What we deem as right and wrong, good and black and white, if you like, good and bad, right and wrong. It's often shaped by our fears, the fears and desires of our unconscious. So, for example, someone with a shadow filled with aggression might develop a strong value of peace. Okay, so the counteraction, the counterbalance of that suppression of aggression, the balance of that coming out in our behaviors is the valuing peace. So while peace is a good value, it's not, there's an imbalance going on there. So value judgments, not what we're projecting, but not what's really going on. That peace is not what's really going on for us. It's the aggression that needs to be dealt with. But what we're projecting is this value of peace. So the shadows influence our values and beliefs different ways, yes, by projection, by counterbalance, by compensatory beliefs, by counterbalancing values. And another way that they show up is in the collective beliefs, the beliefs that have been imposed, I suppose, on us by the environment, by the collective consciousness around us. The people around us, our peers, family, the wider community, have massive influences on our values and beliefs. Huge influences. And the beliefs and values that we really haven't assessed, we haven't really reflected on or consulted or really looked into. Why do I have this belief? Where does it come from? Has it come from me? Where's it come from? Is it the culture? So these cultural projections, they can be our shadows as well. And that becomes our behavior. What the culture believes, what the culture that we live in values is what we project. It's not until you start traveling to different countries or moving to quite different environments, collective environments, different cultures, that you start to see why your beliefs and values might just be wrong, not supportive, not empowering. But it's the way that the culture that you live in perceives that belief, that value. You've just taken it on because that's what you've lived in, your life experience. So shadows can be really potent, really powerful in shaping our beliefs and values. That's why it's worthwhile getting on this journey of looking at shadow work, looking at self-reflection. So the shadows were first introduced by Carl Jung, a psychiatrist, world-renowned psychologist, looking at why we suppress these things. If you like to think your shadows like an iceberg, the little bit, 10% or so we see at the top, is the lens, the beliefs and values, the lens, that shadow, the lens that we see the world through. It's our world view. But there's a whole lot of other stuff below the surface, the unseen. Our unseen, the emotions that we're suppressing, the desires, the fears. These are all parts of us that we've suppressed, that we've pushed down, that we've denied, whether consciously or usually unconsciously. But they still come up in our behaviors, in our unconscious, non-verbal. This is why non-verbal communication is so important, and being able to step back from consciously having a relationship, having an interaction with another person, be able to step back and objectively notice what's going on. It's a really powerful neuro-linguistic programming exercise, the bird's eye view, being able to step into the three perceptual positions, being able to step into the recipient, the other person's perspective, your perspective, and a bird's eye perspective, looking down and observing the non-verbal communication in that relationship. That can give you, especially in a tense emotional confrontation, it can give you some huge insights. Being able to step away and observe what's going on, because, as I said, we see the world through this lens of our beliefs and values, colored by our shadows. shrouded by our shadows, if you like. Being able to step away from that. It takes a lot of internal reflection, internal work to notice our emotions, our feelings, the things that are coming up for us. That gives us that ability to step into those other perceptual positions, the recipient and the bird's eye view. And I think one of the things about shadows, I do say this a lot, is that most of it's golden. Most of our shadows are not to be feared. They're things that we've suppressed, their powers, their strengths, talents, if you like, passions, our intuitive wisdom. All of this stuff has the potential to have been suppressed. Something happened when I was really young. I got laughed at, so I pushed it down. I hid it. By exposing it, by shining light on it, it shows us a talent that we at all never knew we had. So it's worth doing. Well, there's lots of gold in there. It's also holding our fears, our insecurities, our destructive patterns. This is where they lurk in the shadows. Now, shining light on them, again, releases them. We can become whole. We can reach closer to that point of authenticity. Authenticity, in my definition, is being able to accept all parts of us, good and bad. That doesn't mean that the bad take control or take over. It just means that I acknowledge them. I know that they're there. I can be authentic. Now, as coaches, as trainers, being authentic is potentially critical to being an effective trainer. Having walked the journey, having taken the journey, being on the journey, you're a much better place to be empathetic, to be compassionate with your clients as they're in their journey. You can offer much more effective support to a coach when you can not necessarily see, because their shadows, their beliefs, their values, their emotions are going to be theirs, but at least you can hold the space, understanding that they are going through a process. If you've got your own stuff coming up, if you haven't dealt with your own shadows, your own limiting beliefs, then it's going to be harder to hold that space. And that is a key skill for a coach, and even stepping back from that active listening. I was talking about this earlier today. Just being able to active listen, not just listen, because most of the time when we're listening, we're just waiting to get our bit of information out. We're not actively listening. We're not putting our stuff to one side and really, really comprehending, not just listening, but comprehending what the other person's saying. Listen to them with both ears. So to do that means that we're not held up in our own stuff. We're not tied up in our own shadows. We're not doing our unconscious behaviors. We can step back and we can hold that space. Really important as a coach to be able to do that. So just quickly, the ways for doing that, the ways to start shadow work is journaling, being able to write down the thoughts, the feelings, the trigger points, the events during the day, to notice what's going on. It helps us gain clarity. That self-reflection, recording, noticing what's happening, gives us that clarity in what's actually happening for us, rather than just surface level stuff. For some reason, writing, not typing on a computer, writing it down allows us that clarity. And from that clarity, we start to notice patterns of behavior. So we might be triggered by an event and then notice that the same feelings, sometime later, the same feelings come up. Different environment, different people, different place, but similar feelings. And this is when we start to notice the patterns. So by identifying patterns, we start to notice these shadows, the things that we most fear, those limiting beliefs. Why do I keep doing this? What is it about that type of interaction, that environment that knocks me? So journaling, mindfulness and meditation are really effective, because the way I would explain it is that they allow the mind to slow down and have the space instead of racing all over the place, especially today with social media and that we have so much information, the mind's racing, it doesn't get a chance to slow down until we go to sleep, and then we go to sleep, and how hard is it to go to sleep? So meditating just allows the mind to slow down so that we can concentrate on one thing. And by concentrating on one thing, we allow ourselves that space to become self-reflective on it, to become reflective on events, on triggers, on things that have happened. Now, confronting our shadows is always going to be comfortable. That, if you like, that iceberg, the part of us that we consciously understand, but most of it is unconscious, denied, suppressed. We can't become authentic unless we integrate, acknowledge, and integrate, not confront. Acknowledge and integrate all the parts of us. So it's going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to be easy, but it's essential for growth. You know, you can talk about the growth mindset, but I think Joe Dispenza says it best. You can't create a new future if you're being held by your past emotions. You can't start goal setting if you don't believe you're good enough. You can start it, but it becomes an exercise on paper. So this is why it's essential to notice the triggers, to acknowledge the limiting beliefs, sitting with them to understand what it is about them, where they've come from perhaps, but what it is, that feeling that's coming up. Just by noticing these feelings, these emotions coming up, is what helps to integrate a lot of this stuff. The unconscious is struggling to understand it, so it spouts out the only way it can, and the behavior might be smoking. Now, I'll call that the presenting issue. That's the behavior, the presenting behavior. That's the behavior that we see. It's not the problem. Okay, and if you automatically just, the emotion comes up, whatever happens, you're triggered, you start smoking, you're not dealing with the emotion, the feeling before. And by allowing that space, journaling, meditation, mindfulness exercises, allows you that space to reflect on what's happening before the cigarette. What's the emotion? What's the trigger? What are the patterns I'm running that eventually are leading to the smoking of the cigarette? It's really I find it a fascinating exercise to be able to sit with these situations that come up. So just on this weekend, noticing in a relationship with another person what it was for me that was annoying me about them. Now, as I said, the world's reflective. It's a projection that I'm projecting onto them, onto him. But it's not. It's my stuff. So taking that back and sitting with that and exploring what it is, what is it that's bringing this up for me? So I will stop projecting. I'll have a better relationship. I'll be able to interact on a much more effective level and have a much better relationship with that particular person. But also what I'm doing is I'm putting in place a more powerful behavior, a more empowering strategy. You know, Peter Sage, great mentor of mine that delivers EMF, the Elite Mentorship Forum. He says that, you know, if what you're doing isn't working for you, you need to get a better coping strategy. Okay, so how do you do that? You can do that on a conscious level. But as I said this weekend with this guy that was annoying me, what is it about? What is it really going on that's annoying, that he's doing that's annoying me? Where's it coming from within me? What's the emotion? And actually sitting in the moment, because I had some time. Doesn't always happen. You can't always reflect in the moment, but I had a little bit of time to actually self-reflect and sit with it and start to understand what was coming up. Now, I had certain coping strategies that weren't helping. They were limiting my behavior, limiting my interaction, so limiting that relationship. But by reflecting on it, noticing what was coming up, I could think about the actual, what I was feeling, the emotions I was, that were coming up for me, and coming around to a better coping strategy in that situation with him, but also whenever anybody else shows similar behaviors that I was projecting, that I would react differently. I have a better coping strategy. It takes a little bit of time. It's a journey, as I said. And again, it's a layer, but at least it puts in place a better coping strategy in the moment. And those coping strategies can be affirmations, it can be goal setting. There can be lots of different exercises we put in place. As Joe Dispenza says, creating that new future. But if you're being held by the emotions, those affirmations, that goal setting exercises will have limited effective positive results. Yeah, so by acknowledging our shadows, by reflecting on them, meditation, journaling, it allows us that space to transform these limiting beliefs. So we release the limiting beliefs, and we're unlocking our potential, our full potential. We can become more effective. We can put better strategies in place. We become more effective, more compassionate coaches. We can hold that space because we're being more authentic. And let's face it, 90% of our communication is non-verbal. Now, there's a huge amount of energy in transfer going on in that non-verbal relationship, that dance that we play with another person. And that's the sense, that's the feeling that they don't know where it's come from. Is it a safe space to express what they need to express? They're not going to ask you that. It's a sense. Can I go there? So holding that ability to be able to hold that space. And for me, this is an important part of being a coach, is developing that skill to notice when I'm being triggered, when a limiting belief is coming up, when a disempowering sense is coming on. What's going on? And it takes a fair way down the journey to be able to notice that in the moment when I'm coaching, and notice at the moment to be able to park it, stop it distracting from me coaching. Because in a coaching relationship, it's about the clients, not about my stuff. If I'm triggered, my stuff comes up, the interaction that I'm having, my behavior, is going to be colored through a different lens, through a lens of a limiting belief, say. So in that case, just the other day with this guy, when the interaction through the lens of me not feeling good enough was that, if that was the feeling, colored the behavior, the reaction, the interaction that I had, the relationship. But in that moment, because I had time and that moment to actually, for a few minutes, to self-reflect on it and put it in, develop and evolve. This is not helping more. What's a better way of interacting? I could put a more effective coping strategy in place, and then when I next saw him, we could react at a different level. And that's just a relationship. As a coach, critical to realize that it's about the coach, it's about the client, about the coachee, and being able to hold the space for them, because energetically that's what they need. It's not spoken about. So I hope this has been helpful. I just wanted to touch a little bit on how influential our shadows are on our limiting beliefs, on our beliefs and values, and limiting them, and how this reflects in our lives. It also reflects in the way that we interact with our clients. So it's not about dwelling on the negative. It's not about confronting our shadows. It's about being self-reflecting, gaining a deep understanding of who we are, noticing what's coming up for you, having better strategies in place. So by shining a light in those hidden corners of our psyche, we cultivate these skills. We cultivate better resilience. We move to a more authentic person. And for me, one of the things that I evolved and developed as a coach, it's always important. It's important in life, but as a coach more so, because you're selling this stuff, is having a better understanding of your purpose. So as coaches and trainers, shadow work is transforming our lives. It's transforming our lives so that we can transform others' lives. And what are we coaches for? What are we trainers for? To take people from A to B. They've got to sort out the stuff in between, and we're there to support, not necessarily indicate or show the way, is to hold the space so that the client can move from A to B. All right. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been helpful. Beliefs and values, our shadows, our limiting beliefs, and the influence, the reason really that shadow work is so important for trainers, coaches to work through themselves, gain a better understanding of themselves, and have a better life, have a better relationship with the people around them, perform better as a coach. Thanks very much. This is John Farrell. I'm your host on Shining Light on Shadows. This is the new podcast I put out every Friday night. But click on the link here, subscribe, so that you will get up to date notice whenever I put these out. Thanks very much. Bye.